Don's life was never simple, never innocent. From the beginning, darkness clung to him, like a shadow no light could pierce. In his younger years, he carried ties to secret societies, a sense of power that he wielded recklessly, often without conscience. He married young, had 2 children, and even then the fractures in his life were visible, hidden to the outside world, but undeniable to those close enough to witness the quiet cracks forming. His daughter, bright but vulnerable, endured horrors at the hands of someone he knew. Yet Don spoke of it to strangers with twisted pride, boasting she had taken it like a champ, as if survival could replace justice. Long before that, accusations clung to him like a second skin. Allegations that he had assaulted his own sisters, Mary, Jeannie, and Robin, each barely old enough to understand the world around them. These whispers followed him, festering, a stain he never confronted, a seed of darkness that would grow through every chapter of his life. His world collided with Candace in Arkansas, a meeting that ignited a combustible affair. When Pam discovered the betrayal, the relationship shattered. Yet Candace carried life within her, a son who would grow into the eldest, followed by 2 more boys. Don's influence on these children was sinister, seductive, morally hollow. He took the eldest to Knoxville, into shadowed corridors of drug houses where he bought Coca-Cola and paid women, showing the boy a world of vice and corruption as if immorality were a rite of passage. Then came Summer. February 4th, 2016. Summer, small, bright, and innocent, the child who would capture Don's obsessive, almost feral love. She was his treasure, yet even that love was tangled in neglect and danger. By the age of 3, she had already tasted the drugs her parents left within reach, and one night nearly overdosed. Instead of rushing her to the hospital, Candace sought help from friends, a choice that blurred the line between survival and negligence. Summer's world was precarious, a tightrope over a chasm of adult recklessness, a place where she existed as a prop, a child to be managed only when convenient. Religion became a performance. Weekly trips to the First Baptist Church, then SDA Kingsport, sermons echoing over a home filled with criminals and fractured morality. Sacred words coexisted with vile acts, morality intertwined with immorality, and Don's temper was legendary, his charm suffocating, a predator hidden behind the mask of faith. Within this fractured world, the children absorbed danger and contradiction, inheriting a chaotic legacy they could not escape. In 2020, the horror escalated. A 911 call pierced the night, shrill and desperate. Don had struck Candace, but the terror did not end there. Summer's cries followed, "Help me, Mommy! Help me, Daddy! He's hurting me!" Her brothers echoed her terror, naming their father, pleading for intervention. The police arrived 30 minutes later, but the damage was already done. Candace filed a domestic violence application, then retracted it, silenced by fear, manipulation, and perhaps hopelessness. Then came June 15th, 2021. Summer vanished. The world was told it was an abduction, a tragedy to rally around, but the whispers told another story. Candace had an accident, a secret buried beneath layers of lies and obfuscation. Don seized the media, creating a narrative of hope and resurrection, speaking in solemn tones of seeing his daughter again in the afterlife. Weeks later, the family appeared on Dr. Phil, a public spectacle of grief and control. The boys were removed by CPS, torn from the chaos, leaving Don with the quiet, yet relentless ache of lost control over the ones he claimed to love. Don's descent continued. Before prison, he took to YouTube channels, drunken in rage, striking Candace, proclaiming his invincibility. "I've got 7 alibis. Candace has none. She's going down." He hurled curses, threats, and scripture twisted into weapons, refusing direct answers, avoiding the truth behind layers of manipulation. Years passed. Summer remained missing. Don grew quieter, more calculating. He blamed neighbors, Fred, Jody, Andy, casting shadows on anyone who might expose him. He orchestrated distractions, manipulated perceptions, maintained control over the narrative of absence, a puppeteer in a house of horrors. Then the new lead arrived, a ripple in his constructed reality that became a tidal wave of fear. November the 13th, 2025. FBI and TBI raided the Van Hill Road property. Don's carefully curated world of secrecy, intimidation, and lies collapsed instantly. Every shadow he hid behind, every story he twisted, every lie he spun was threatened with exposure. Panic gripped him, a physical force, pulsing through his veins. This was the moment when his past and present collided, when control slipped through his fingers. Days later, he committed another act of cruelty and defiance. He tore down every flyer his daughter's supporters had posted. Each one, a beacon of hope for those searching, shredded beneath his hands, a gesture of dominance, a declaration that he still controlled the narrative. Even as the law closed in, the whispers of past abuse lingered like smoke. Accusations of assault on his sisters, the shadow of his children's trauma, the echoes of screams long silenced. Don existed now not only in the shadows of his own making, but under the suffocating weight of fear, hunted by the truth he had long evaded. Don's love and cruelty were inseparable, each feeding the other, a dark symbiosis that defined every choice he made. The past and present intertwined in a tapestry of manipulation, neglect, and violence. He was a man whose presence was a constant, unnerving reminder that evil often wears the mask of normalcy, hiding in plain sight, until justice comes calling, relentless and inescapable. And on that cold November day, the shadows he had so carefully maintained began to crumble, leaving a man terrified, exposed and alone in the reckoning he could no longer control. And so, the world he tried to control began to slip from his grasp. The secrets he buried for decades, the lives he fractured, and the cries he silenced could no longer be contained. The walls of his carefully constructed reality were crumbling, and with every echo of investigation, every shadow exposed by law enforcement, Don's power diminished. No amount of scripture, no act of defiance, no lies could shield him from the reckoning he had long avoided. The love he claimed for Summer, once possessive and consuming, now became his undoing, a reminder of everything he had failed, everything he had destroyed. Flyers torn, stories twisted, truth obscured. None of it could hide the consequences that finally caught up to him. In the end, Don was left in the quiet of his own unraveling, a man haunted not by the world outside, but by the life he had created within. The past he had ignored, the abuse he had inflicted, the children he had harmed, all stood as witnesses to his choices. He could no longer manipulate, no longer intimidate. The shadows were gone, and in that stark, unforgiving light, the truth waited, patient and relentless, ready to reclaim what had been lost. The darkness that had defined him so long was meeting its end, and for Summer, for the children, and for those silenced by fear, the reckoning had finally begun. And in the end, Don stood alone, stripped of control, stripped of shadows to hide behind. The lies, the violence, the years of silence, they could no longer protect him. Every scream he silenced, every life he broke, every secret he buried rose like a tide against him. The world he had tried to bend to his will was crumbling, and there was no refuge, no scripture, no threat that could save him. Summer's absence, once a mark of his possession, became a testament to his failure. Flyers torn, voices ignored, truth buried, they all returned, relentless, unforgiving. In that cold, stark light, the darkness that had defined him met its reckoning. And though he still lingered, terrified and exposed, the echoes of justice began to rise, soft at first, then unstoppable, reminding the world that even the deepest shadows cannot hold the truth forever. The shadows that once protected him have faded. Every lie, every act of cruelty, every silence now presses down on him. Don is left to face the unraveling of the life he built on fear and deception. The darkness that defined him meets the light at last, unrelenting and exposing. And somewhere in that exposure, the echoes of summer, of the children, of every voice silenced by his actions, rise. The world may never forget, and the truth will no longer remain hidden. Now he sits alone, eaten from the inside out by a guilt he refuses to name. In the quiet, he mutters the same bitter lines he's clung to for years, blaming the government, blaming CPS, blaming anyone except himself. He still whispers that they kidnapped Summer and stole his boys. He lives trapped inside his own skull now, a man infected with rage, anger, torment, circling endlessly in a mind that offers no escape. The silence in that house is thick, heavy, suffocating. It presses on him at night, reminding him of everything he lost, everything he destroyed, everything he can never outrun. He once said he would rather die than go to prison, and now those words echo back at him like a curse he placed on himself. Because every day he wakes is a sentence, every memory is a punishment, every hour is a reminder that truth always claws its way to the surface, even through years of lies. And in the end, with his world collapsing and the shadows no longer protecting him, there is only one hope left, that justice finally comes for Summer, that her story is no longer buried in fear, but carried forward in truth, in light, and in the voices that refuse to be silenced.
Unfurl.
Donald Wells, you are a despicable, evil human being. You are the devil in disguise. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please keep praying for Summer, Moon, Utah Wells. Goodbye for now.